Alright guys, this is part 5 of my Mercedes W202 build. So here we have a coilover install and a couple cool little tips and tricks so you guys can learn on the way if you have a W202 chassis Mercedes from, I think they're from 94 to like 2000, 2001. So you guys to show you like what I've done and where I'm at the moment. So the rear has been complete. That was a lot of work, a lot of pain, a lot of things that went in the way. Guys, whenever you're ordering, especially if you're ordering spacers and bolts, make sure your bolts fit. My bolts were too long and I had to cut them several times with one of these grinders, Makitas, whatever they're called, you know. And it was a pain, man. It took a while to figure out why it was scratching and not moving, until I finally figured it out. Mainly that's what took the longest time. But yeah, if you don't coilover install before, it'll be easy. If you haven't, man, it's not as easy as it looks. Especially on these Mercedes, man, it can take a while to figure it out. But here is a quick a shortcut for you to understand how it works. Usually, you know, when coilovers, it's a spring and a shock inside of it. In Mercedes, it's a little bit different. It's a spring by itself and a shock by itself too. The spring goes in here and the shock goes up here, so they're separate, they're not together. I'm sure there's other suspension kits that are maybe different that actually have this spring over the shock. But in this application or this kind of setup or kit I got, that's not the case. This is a DD branded coilover from Taiwan. I didn't really cheap out on them. They were like $850, which is like a decent amount, a decent price for them. And DD stands for drag and drift. These are more for comfort and stance, which I really was looking for. That was my main goal. And really, to take off a shock is really easy because you have to just unscrew the top here and the bolt that holds the shock in here, and pretty much you just slide off the shock. But to get to the spring, obviously you need to try to go through taking off the bolts to lower this part out to get the shock loose. Thing is, that takes so long. I recommend you guys getting spring compressors. It's a spring compressor. I don't have one at the moment. I don't know, my dad took it or something. But what it does, all you do is you compress the spring. You twist bolts from both sides and it tightens the spring and makes it come out, which saves so much time, guys. I'm serious. I've probably spent a week figuring everything out because, you know, I don't want to screw it up and break anything. So yeah, that's the case. So yeah, compress the screen, the spring, have one piece of metal probably holding one side and the other side, and there's like a bar or a piece of metal, and then you just twist the bolts and it just compresses, and then you can install your new springs. My rear is done, but these are my new rotors. They're carbon ceramic rotors. Here's a quick look. I got a good deal on Amazon. I found the same ones at stores, and they were much more expensive. Pretty much the same thing. I guess it's just a little bit different branded. But the ones for the rears fit perfectly. Here I got my springs and my shocks. And well, this small foot is for the next install. That's for another time. But yeah, I've been trying to figure out the exhaust over and over again, and I'm just gonna have a guy do it professionally instead of messing around myself, ruining things. So yeah, at the moment, yeah, I got the spring and the shock out after finding out how to do all that and finally getting to the compressor and compressing the springs. But I got to the next thing I gotta do is clean everything here. I'm gonna have a brake cleaner first clean out all the really tough stuff in between here where the rotor was, where the brake pads work, clean it all out, and get a degreaser and get a sponge with soap. It's something you don't really have to do, but it definitely helps and it keeps all clean. I like it all to be clean because this Mercedes has 140,000 miles on it, which is still not much for a 17-year-old car. I think it's 17-year-old. It's a 99, so for that year, 140,000 miles is not bad at all. Man, I had no issues with this thing whatsoever. I'm really happy about it. But yeah, I'll get back to you guys. Another quick tip for you guys. A great multi-purpose degreaser is super clean. You guys can find this at any auto parts store. Pretty much just spray all the components that you're going to be using. I'm going to be replacing brake pads and I'm going to be painting the calipers. So I'm getting the calipers all cleaned up, mainly just the outside with the part I'm going to be spraying. Where the rotor sits, I did the inside, I sprayed that with the degreaser. I'm going to also spray that section of the caliper. And then I take a sponge with soap and wash it down. And then take the brake cleaner and take it after you clean it up and just spray the insides of the components, like in the cracks everywhere where it's going to be a lot of friction and movements, and that way it can get cleaned up and get all that crap out of there. When I was talking about the compressing springs, that's what I meant. It's a really stiff spring, so it kind of bent the bolts, which is unfortunate, but it did the job. I got the little rubber, I don't know what you want to call it, grommet or gasket or fitting on top of the spring where the original was. That rubber piece went on top. Don't get confused which way the spring goes. You just gotta make sure it's the same way as the original went. Pretty much the bolt that's underneath right here, start unscrewing it individually. Well, not individually, you gotta keep unscrew this one and this one, make sure they're kind of evenly coming out at the same time. And same goes when you're tightening the bolts as well to tighten the spring. And just do it until it's loose, and then the little bolts on the sides, unscrew those and take them apart, and that's it. That's the only thing. Keep the spring inside and make sure it doesn't come out. To make this a little bit easier, the part that you are gonna spray paint or paint in any way, it's not a bad idea to heat it up. You can use anything, a heat gun, or in this case I'm doing it old school or home. In this case I'm doing it with a hair dryer. Put it on full blast, full heat, heat up the parts with whatever you got, and that makes the paint dry quicker and it makes the process much easier.